The vast expanse of space stretched out, dark and endless, far away from Earth, in a part of the universe few knew, an alien race prepared for the most important mission of their history. For 100 years, they had trained, planned, and waited for this moment, their invasion of Earth. They had studied Earth's weaknesses, developed powerful weapons, and built a fleet of enormous spaceships, ready to strike when the time came. Every inch of their strategy was perfect, every plan meticulously crafted. They were ready. The alien ships, sleek and massive, cruised silently through the galaxy. Their engines hummed with power, sending them toward the blue and green planet. Below, the fleet was led by the largest warship in the alien armada, its dark silhouette cutting through the stars like a predator on the hunt. The ship's hull was scarred from years of battles across the galaxy, but it was the pride of their species. The command center was filled with alien officers, their faces stern and focused. Each one of them knew the weight of this mission. They were about to take Earth, and they would not fail. Inside the ship's control room, Commander Zelo stood at the front of the room, his sharp, calculating eyes fixed on the massive holographic map of Earth. The other officers, all deeply trained for this day, waited in silence. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment, an entire century of training. They were the finest warriors the universe had ever seen, the perfect soldiers built to conquer. But even with their incredible technology, their advanced strategies, and their centuries of preparation, there was one thing they had never fully understood: Earth. For all their advanced knowledge, the alien leaders had underestimated humanity. They had studied Earth for so long that they believed they knew everything about it. They knew Earth's weaknesses, divided governments, its reliance on technology, and its reliance on peace. They believed humanity would fall without much of a fight. But there was one thing they didn't know. Earth had something far greater than any weapon: the human spirit. It was something they hadn't counted on. Commander Xylo, one of the officers, called, snapping Xylo out of his thoughts. "We're almost in range. The Earth's atmosphere will soon be in our grasp." Xylo nodded, his heart pounding. He had been part of this plan for decades, but now that the moment had arrived, the pressure was intense. "Prepare the fleet for entry," he ordered. "No mistakes. We've trained for this day for too long to fail now." Outside, the stars passed by in a blur as the alien armada drew closer to Earth. Their weapons were primed, ready to unleash destruction upon the planet. But as they neared the outer edges of Earth's atmosphere, the first signs of humanity's resistance began to stir. Back on Earth, there was nothing unusual. People went about their day-to-day lives, unaware that a battle for their survival was just moments away. Governments carried on with their normal business. Cities hummed with activity. There was no sign of the impending storm. The Earth's defenses were in place, but they weren't yet activated. In the quiet command centers scattered across the globe, military personnel sipped their morning coffee, monitoring radar screens and satellite feeds. They saw strange on the radar, but it was nothing out of the ordinary. Perhaps a satellite malfunction, a weather anomaly. The world continued to spin, unaware of the dark ships making their way toward them, and then the first wave hit. From the alien warships came a sudden burst of energy, an intense laser barrage that cut through the atmosphere, shattering Earth's calm. The peaceful sky was filled with flashing lights and explosions as the alien fleet descended. Their ships were so large and powerful that even Earth's most advanced weapons had no chance of stopping them. Earth's military forces quickly scrambled into action, but the aliens were too advanced, too fast. The Earth's satellites flickered and went dark, their communication systems silenced. The aliens had anticipated this. Their first attack was designed to neutralize Earth's technological advantage. They had prepared for everything, or so they thought. In the chaos that followed, the human forces were thrown into disarray. Soldiers, pilots and commanders were rushing to take their positions, but they had no idea how to face the overwhelming might of the alien fleet. The Earth had never faced anything like this before. They had never imagined a threat so large, so terrifying, so alien. Meanwhile, in the alien ships, the commanders watched with cold detachment. They had trained for this moment. They had calculated every possible outcome, but even with their advanced technology and flawless strategy, they couldn't predict the one thing they would soon encounter: humanity's fight for survival. The aliens, who had spent a century preparing for Earth's conquest, were about to learn that no amount of training or preparation could prepare them for the unpredictable force of a desperate species. As the first ship made contact with Earth's surface, the message was clear: Earth would not go down without a fight. The storm had arrived, and the aliens would soon realize that even their 100 years of training might not be enough to guarantee victory. In that moment, The calm before the storm was shattered, and Earth's fate was sealed. The calm that once ruled the skies was abruptly shattered. As the alien fleet made its descent, Earth's atmosphere crackled with energy. The first laser beams streaked across the sky, cutting through the peaceful morning like a thunderclap. From the ground, people looked up, confused at the strange lights flickering above them. What began as a minor anomaly quickly transformed into a catastrophic event. The sky, once a soft blue, was now alive with bright flashes of alien energy, leaving everyone on edge, in the midst of the confusion. Military radar stations all over the world began to alert their operators. The strange readings that had been dismissed as anomalies moments before were now recognized for what they truly were: the arrival of a threat that humanity was not prepared for. Across continents, from America's west coast to the plains of Africa, the first signs of an alien invasion were unmistakable. Panic spread quickly. Air raid sirens wailed in every major city as military bases scrambled to prepare for the unknown. Fighter jets were scrambled from airfields, and helicopters lifted into the sky, their engines growling as they rushed toward the alien fleet. But despite the flurry of activity on the ground, nothing on Earth could match the overwhelming power of the invaders. Inside the alien ships, Commander Zilo stood with his hands clenched behind his back, watching the chaos unfold through a transparent display. His eyes glowed with cold satisfaction as he observed Earth's defenses being neutralized with each passing second. The plan was working flawlessly. "Deploy the drone units," Zilo ordered, his voice calm, betraying no emotion. He knew his forces were far superior. The drones, small but deadly, launched from the belly of each ship, darting down toward Earth's surface. They were designed to eliminate any resistance before the ground invasion began. On Earth, the first military response came from the United States, where the National Defense Command immediately issued orders to activate the emergency defense systems. However, as the lasers from the alien ships continued to strike, the defense systems began to fail one by one. The Earth had never faced anything like this. Their advanced radar systems were blind, their communication satellites gone, and their defenses helpless against the alien onslaught. As the alien drones struck, a squadron of human jets flew up to engage. They were fast and nimble, but they were nothing compared to the alien firepower. One by one, the fighter jets were shot down, their pilots unable to react fast enough to avoid the deadly alien weapons. Some managed to fire off a few missiles, but they were mere pebbles compared to the juggernauts in the sky. On the ground, chaos reigned. Cities were being torn apart by the alien lasers. Buildings crumbled as entire city blocks were reduced to rubble. The air was thick with smoke and dust, and the screams of civilians were drowned out by the roar of alien ships overhead. Amidst the devastation, military forces tried to regroup, but their attempts were futile. The ground forces lacked the advanced technology to stand up to the alien might, yet, in the heart of this destruction, humanity's true strength began to emerge. As entire sections of cities were wiped away, the survivors rallied. They fled to underground bunkers, to military outposts, and to any shelter they could find. But even as they hid from the alien firestorm, they plotted their next move. This wasn't the end. Humans were resourceful, they fought for survival, and now, they had to fight to protect their home. Across the globe, news outlets were broadcasting the destruction. But even as the world watched in horror, something surprising began to happen. The very thing that had given the aliens their overwhelming confidence began to fade. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity. Their military, despite being outgunned, had something the aliens could never have imagined: unity. In the chaos, soldiers and civilians alike began to organize. Resistance movements took shape. Military generals, civilians, scientists, and ordinary people all pulled together, sharing resources and information. For the first time, Earth was united not by governments or borders, but by the shared desire to survive. The human spirit, something that no alien race could have anticipated, began to shine through. Back in the command center of the alien fleet, Zilo's eyes narrowed as he watched Earth's responses unfold. He had anticipated a swift victory, but what he hadn't anticipated was the resilience of the humans. They were not cowering in fear. They were fighting back, desperate, yes, but with a fire that could not be extinguished. Zilo ordered the fleet to move deeper into Earth's atmosphere. His goal was simple: destroy everything. The first wave had been to disable communications and military technology, but now it was time for total annihilation. As the alien warships advanced, they began targeting cities, weapons, caches, and military bases. A strange sense of urgency filled the air. The aliens were strong, but they began to realize that Earth was not as fragile as they thought. Meanwhile, a group of human pilots, undeterred by the devastating losses, formed a last-ditch effort to launch a counter-offensive with everything they had left. They charged into the heart of the alien fleet, armed with experimental missiles designed to pierce the alien ship's defenses. It was a risky maneuver, one that might not work, but it was their last chance to make a stand. The aliens, for the first time since the start of the invasion, began to feel uncertainty. Despite their overwhelming firepower, they were starting to lose control. Their arrogance had led them to underestimate humanity. Now, in the midst of this fight, they were beginning to see just how dangerous Earth could be. The battle raged on, and the first 30 minutes of the invasion were marked by alien superiority. Yet, as Earth's forces adapted and retaliated, the aliens were forced to confront a bitter truth: they might not win this war. The first clash had been theirs to claim, but it wasn't over yet, and the fight for Earth, for survival, was only just beginning. As the alien ships loomed over the broken cities below, their confidence began to waver. They had been trained for 100 years to conquer this world, but Earth had just begun to show them the true power of its people. The storm was no longer just theirs. It was about to be humanity's. The battlefield was a chaotic mess. Alien warships hovered ominously in the sky, their weapons firing relentlessly upon Earth's cities below. The air was thick with the sound of explosions. The ground trembled with the impact of alien lasers striking the Earth's surface. Yet, amidst this destruction, something unexpected was beginning to stir hope. As the human forces struggled to regroup in the aftermath of the initial invasion, something profound began to unfold. In the midst of their defeat, in the wreckage of cities and the loss of loved ones, the very thing that the alien fleet had not accounted for began to shine: humanity's spirit. The aliens, who had spent 100 years preparing for this moment, had failed to understand that the power of unity, resilience, and determination could not be measured by technology alone. In underground bunkers, military leaders scrambled to develop a response. They had no idea how to face the overwhelming power of the aliens. But one thing was clear: they weren't going down without a fight. Soldiers, civilians, and scientists were all coming together, sharing whatever resources they could, putting aside differences and uniting under one banner: survival. On the streets, as the last remnants of the military tried to defend their cities, ordinary citizens were emerging from their shelters. Some were carrying tools, others had whatever weapons they could find. With determination in their eyes, they stood shoulder to shoulder with soldiers, ready to fight for their homes. A few hours ago, they were just ordinary people. Now, they were warriors, and together they would find a way to stand against the alien invaders. The most surprising part was how quickly the resistance grew. It wasn't just a few military units fighting back anymore. It was an entire world of individuals, each contributing what they could to the effort. Even in the midst of the destruction, there was a sense of purpose, a sense of something greater than the alien threat itself. People began to realize that this wasn't just about saving their homes, it was about defending the very idea of humanity. Across the globe, from the mountains of Asia to the deserts of Africa, from the icy reaches of the Arctic to the crowded streets of South America, people were waking up. They had no advanced technology or powerful weapons, but they had each other. In this moment, that was enough. In the command center of the alien fleet, Commander Xylo stood still, his face unreadable as he watched the unfolding scenes. His officers were reporting an unexpected increase in human activity. They had expected the humans to crumble, to scatter, but instead, they were rising against all odds. They were fighting back. Xylo had never considered this. He had trained his entire life for this invasion, and yet here they were, the humans, refusing to be crushed underfoot. We underestimated them, Xylo muttered to himself. His voice, usually filled with the confidence of a seasoned conqueror, now held a note of hesitation. The humans, despite their primitive weapons and limited technology, had something far more dangerous than anything the aliens had prepared for: the ability to come together in the face of certain destruction. Increase the offensive, Xylo commanded, his voice now colder, more calculated. This resistance must be crushed. But the more the aliens pushed, the more resistance they met. They had expected fear and chaos, but they didn't anticipate the creativity of the humans. As the alien ships continued to rain destruction on Earth, human forces began to adapt. Makeshift weapons and guerrilla tactics became the norm. Humans, ever resourceful, had learned quickly how to exploit the alien fleet's weaknesses. One of the alien warships, a massive vessel brimming with advanced weaponry, was taking direct fire from Earth's military. But the humans weren't using conventional methods. They had found ways to use the landscape itself as their weapon. They lured the alien ship into narrow canyons, where its enormous size made it vulnerable. Once trapped, a group of human jets swooped in, delivering a precision strike to the vulnerable underbelly of the ship. The attack succeeded in ways no one had expected. The ship didn't explode, but it was critically damaged. This wasn't a victory in the traditional sense, but it was a major blow to the alien fleet. The first wave of humans had shown them that, even without superior technology, Earth had something more powerful: human ingenuity. Meanwhile, resistance groups around the world began to communicate, using whatever means they had left, from ancient radios to hacked satellite feeds. They formed a worldwide network of human resistance. The idea that together we stand resonated across continents. The resistance wasn't confined to one area or group, it was global, and that was the real power behind it. On the front lines, the battle had become more than just a fight for survival. It was now a fight for pride, for honor. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was standing tall in the face of the impossible, and this, more than anything else, was what the aliens couldn't prepare for. That as the battle raged on, the alien fleet began to encounter more and more human resistance, each moment pushing them further into unknown territory. Alien commanders began to grow frustrated. They had trained for decades to conquer the Earth, but they hadn't accounted for one crucial factor: the determination of a species that had always risen when faced with adversity. The cracks in the alien strategy began to show. What had started as a flawless plan to wipe out Earth's defenses now felt like a desperate attempt to maintain control. The more the humans fought, the more the aliens realized that they weren't just facing an enemy, they were facing a force of nature. The longer the humans held their ground, the harder it became for the aliens to maintain their arrogance. And so, in the heart of Earth's largest cities, amid the crumbling skyscrapers and burning streets, humanity's true strength came alive. The aliens, who had believed their victory was inevitable, began to see the unimaginable. Their 100 years of preparation, their superior technology, and their flawless plans had not anticipated what lay ahead. Humanity, against all odds, was beginning to fight back. The storm that the aliens had unleashed was no longer just theirs, it was Earth's. The alien fleet loomed over Earth, but something had changed. Despite their overwhelming superiority, the aliens were beginning to feel the pressure. Their perfect strategy was unraveling. The humans, though outmatched in terms of firepower, had something the aliens never anticipated: an unpredictable, relentless drive to survive. What had been expected to be a swift conquest was now a battle of wills, and humanity was not backing down. The alien commanders watched in disbelief as their once powerful fleet began to suffer damage. The humans were resourceful. They had adapted, quickly exploiting the smallest vulnerabilities in the alien ship's defenses. The initial surprise tactics were working, but the aliens still had the upper hand. For every small victory the humans achieved, the alien fleet retaliated with unrelenting force. Yet the human resistance didn't falter. The more they fought, the more the aliens began to question their superiority. On Earth's surface, the cities were in ruins, but the spirit of humanity was more alive than ever. From the ashes of destruction, new resistance forces had formed. People from every nation, every background, had set aside their differences to fight as one. They knew they had no time for division. The world's leaders had been taken out in the first wave of attacks, but the citizens, soldiers, and volunteers carried on. Every inch of Earth was now a battleground, and humanity was making its stand. Back in the command center of the alien fleet, Commander Xylo paced in frustration. His once perfect plan was falling apart. Despite having trained his fleet for a century, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of dread gnawing at him. The humans were not the easy prey he had believed them to be. They were fighting back, and not just in the way he had anticipated. Earth's greatest strength wasn't its technology or military force, it was its unity and willpower. And that was something Xylo could not comprehend. "Send in the second wave," Xylo ordered, his voice tight. "We must crush them completely. Show them that resistance is futile." But even as he spoke, doubt lingered in his mind. The alien fleet had lost some of its most advanced ships, and the damage was mounting. The humans were relentless. The second wave of alien forces began to descend. This time, they brought even more advanced weaponry, larger ships, and better trained forces. But despite the increased firepower, the human resistance was ready. The battle now shifted from the air to the ground. Alien troops began to land in various regions, hoping to secure key locations, but when they hit the ground, they found themselves in a fight that was far more difficult than they had anticipated. But humans had learned how to fight back with everything at their disposal. Makeshift bombs, homemade weapons, and guerrilla tactics became the norm. They didn't fight like an organized army. They fought like individuals, using their environment to their advantage. In the rubble of destroyed buildings, in the forests and hills, humanity's warriors knew the land better than any alien soldier ever could. It was their home, and they fought for it with a passion that aliens couldn't understand. One of the key turning points came when a small group of human resistance fighters managed to infiltrate one of the alien command centers. They had no sophisticated equipment, just their knowledge of the terrain and an unshakable determination to succeed. The mission was simple: sabotage. They planted explosives in the heart of the alien command ship, a vessel so powerful it had once seemed invincible. The explosion sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, creating chaos. For a brief moment, the humans had gained the upper hand. It wasn't just the military forces making a difference though. Ordinary civilians, people who had never picked up a weapon in their lives, were now fighting with everything they had. In one city, a group of engineers used their knowledge to hack into alien communications, disrupting their command network. In another, farmers had turned their tractors into makeshift tanks, charging into alien positions and causing massive damage. Meanwhile, in space, the alien fleet was starting to fray. The once unbeatable warships, with their massive impenetrable shields, were now facing real challenges. Human-made missiles, though primitive, began to find their marks. They struck weak points in the alien ship's hulls, causing significant damage. And as the alien fleet's numbers dwindled, the human fighters grew bolder, taking more risks, engaging in daring attacks that had once seemed impossible. But it wasn't just the aliens who were feeling the pressure. Commander Xylo, who had once been confident in his victory, now found himself questioning his every decision. He had been trained to lead, to conquer, but what good was training when your enemy was fighting with every ounce of their being? He turned to his officers. This is not what we expected. They are not just resisting, they are adapting, evolving their tactics. This fight has become something we never prepared for. Xylo's officers remained silent, their faces etched with the same doubt. They had all believed the conquest of Earth would be swift, but now they were caught in a war of attrition. The humans were not going down easily every day. Their resistance grew stronger on Earth. The tide was shifting. The aliens, who had once dominated the skies and the ground, were now being driven back, bit by bit. Earth's forces had learned from every battle, and the invaders were beginning to realize that the humans were not only surviving, they were winning. The second wave had not been the victory they had hoped for. Instead, it had become another symbol of their faltering invasion. As the sun set over the devastated cities, the human forces regrouped. They knew that the battle was far from over. The aliens still controlled much of the sky, and their fleet was formidable, but the humans had learned to fight differently. They had learned to adapt, to outthink their enemies. And for the first time in this war, they felt a flicker of hope. The aliens had trained for 100 years, but in just a matter of hours, the tide was turning. The question now wasn't whether humanity could survive it, was whether the alien fleet could withstand the unyielding will of Earth's people. And as Earth's forces continued to push back, one thing was certain: the aliens had underestimated humanity's power, and that mistake would cost them dearly. The battle had escalated to new heights. Earth's once quiet cities, now scorched and scarred by alien firepower, had become battlegrounds where humans fought with an intensity that shocked their invaders. The alien ships, once confident in their overwhelming superiority, were now reeling from the human resistance. For the first time, the invaders were forced to play catch-up. The tide was shifting, and the humans were proving they were not so easily defeated. On the ground, Earth's forces had adapted with shocking speed. What had started as a desperate struggle had transformed into a relentless counteroffensive. Humanity's creativity, born from years of survival against each other and the harsh elements of their world, was now being applied to this extraordinary conflict. They had no choice but to fight in unconventional ways. They no longer depended solely on military might. Their true strength lay in their ability to think outside the box, to use their environment and their wits to turn the tide. In urban ruins, teams of human resistance fighters, armed with nothing but homemade explosives and scavenged alien tech, carried out raids against the invaders. The aliens, whose ships were designed to be impervious to most human weaponry, were now being disabled. by clever traps, Earth's streets had become a maze, where the invaders were not only fighting humanity but also struggling against the terrain itself. The humans had found an unlikely ally in the environment. Using the knowledge of their cities and natural landscapes, they created clever ambushes and traps that allowed them to inflict significant damage on the alien fleet. Roads that once led to strategic points of defense now became death traps for alien forces. The more the aliens tried to destroy humanity's last stand, the more the humans adapted. They learned quickly from their mistakes, and that learning curve was the aliens' greatest threat. Meanwhile, in space, the battle was reaching its boiling point. The alien fleet, once vast and unchallenged, had been whittled down by precise strikes from the remaining human fighter jets. The smaller, more agile human aircraft had learned to exploit the gaps in the alien ships' massive defenses. They couldn't match the aliens in raw firepower, but they didn't need to. Speed and precision became their weapons. Small, rapid-fire missiles, coupled with the relentless guerrilla tactics of human pilots, brought down alien ships one by one. The once immense alien warships, with their towering, impenetrable armor, were beginning to show signs of weakness. Commander Xylo, the leader of the alien fleet, stood at the command center of his flagship, his hands clenched tightly behind his back. His eyes scanned the holographic displays, showing the increasingly chaotic situation. His fleet, once so confident, was now faltering. The humans had given them far more resistance than they had ever predicted. The raw determination of these creatures, who had once seemed so fragile, was unraveling the aliens' perfect plan. What went wrong? Xylo muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with frustration. He had expected the humans to collapse under the weight of the invasion, to crumble before the might of his fleet. But now, with each passing hour, the alien fleet was being pushed back. Xylo couldn't understand it. How had they underestimated the humans so badly? Commander, an officer spoke up, his voice trembling with uncertainty. We've sustained heavy losses. Our outer perimeter is weakening. The humans, they're getting bolder. They're attacking our supply lines. Xylo's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. The humans were everywhere. They were in the streets, in the air, and now even in space. They were not just resisting, they were fighting back on every front, and they were winning. What should have been a swift and decisive victory had turned into an unwinnable war. Xylo had no choice but to admit it. His fleet was on the brink of collapse. The aliens had not counted on one thing, the human will to fight. They had spent a century preparing for this invasion, training their soldiers, building their weapons, designing their ships. But they had underestimated the most powerful force in the universe, the power of people fighting for their lives, their homes, and their future. Back on Earth, a new wave of resistance was rising. The cities that had once been devastated by the alien onslaught were now fortified with barricades, trenches, and makeshift weapons. Humanity had learned from the best of their history. Unity and the will to survive had become their rallying cry. They no longer saw themselves as fragmented nations, but as one people, united against a common enemy. In one city, survivors worked tirelessly to create an electromagnetic pulse device, a last-ditch effort to disable the alien fleet's technology. It was a long shot, but it was humanity's shot. The device was small, unassuming, and fragile, but if it worked, it could turn the tide of the entire war. The human scientists and engineers had worked day and night, despite the ongoing attacks, to get it ready. The device wasn't perfect, but it was their best chance to disrupt the alien ship's advanced systems. Thus the resistance fighters gathered to launch the final attack. There was no longer any hesitation in their movements. They knew the risks. The stakes had never been higher. The alien fleet, weakened but still powerful, hovered above Earth. The humans had one chance to strike. If the device worked, they could disable the alien ship's ability to fight back. If it failed, humanity's hope would be crushed in an instant. The operation was set in motion. Resistance fighters moved in stealth, silently maneuvering through the shadows of the city. Every step was calculated, every move precise. They knew this was their last stand. The device was ready. The fate of Earth rested in their hands. They activated the EMP, and for a split second, the entire city went silent. No explosions, no gunfire, just an eerie calm. And then, the lights flickered. Back in space, Xylo's command center went dark. The alien ships began to lose power. Their once impenetrable shields flickered and failed. The alien fleet had been hit. The humans had done it. The EMP had worked. Z's heart sank as the reports came in. His fleet, once so powerful, was now crippled. The human resistance, against all odds, had won. The aliens had underestimated Earth, and now, it was time for humanity's final push. The battle wasn't over. But for the first time, the aliens knew they were no longer in control. The humans had shown them what it meant to fight for survival, and they would pay the price for their arrogance. The alien fleet, once poised to dominate Earth, was now on the brink of collapse. Commander Xylo stared out over the battlefield. The remnants of his grand invasion plan scattered across the ruined cities below. The humans had turned the tide in ways he never anticipated. His advanced technology, years of training, and superior tactics had all been rendered useless against the most unexpected force, human will. On the ground, the resistance was pushing forward with relentless intensity. What had once been a broken, scattered defense was now a cohesive force. The human spirit, forged in the fires of adversity, had rallied. Every street, every building, every piece of land was now contested. Human fighters, soldiers and civilians alike, flooded the alien positions with courage and determination, using everything they had: broken weapons, stolen alien technology, and sheer grit. The EMP strike had crippled much of the alien fleet's technology, and now, with their ships disabled and communications in disarray, the humans had a window of opportunity. But that window was closing fast. Xylo knew that if his forces could regroup, even for a short time, they could turn the battle back in their favor. But that was no longer certain. The humans were everywhere. Inside the remnants of their once impenetrable command ship, the alien leaders gathered in tense silence. Xylo paced back and forth, his mind racing. "We are losing. We cannot afford to retreat now," he muttered. "We must hold our ground. If we give them even a moment of respite, they will overwhelm us. Commander, our forces are stretched thin. Our supply lines are cut, and many of our ships are beyond repair." An officer replied, his voice faltering. "We are no longer the hunters, but the hunted." Xylo's jaw clenched. He had trained his entire life for this mission, prepared for every possibility, yet nothing had prepared him for the sheer persistence of the humans. They had fought back against unimaginable odds, and now they were pushing forward with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. The humans had found their weakness, the very arrogance with which the aliens had approached the invasion. They hadn't believed humanity could withstand the first wave, let alone launch a counterattack. The alien fleet, now reduced in numbers and capabilities, was a shadow of its former self. What had seemed like an unstoppable force was now struggling for survival. The humans, armed with nothing but their resolve and ingenuity, were beginning to gain ground. And Xylo knew that time was running out on the heart of a devastated city. Earth's resistance fighters gathered for their final assault. They had no more high-tech weapons left, just the remnants of what they had scavenged. But they had learned something crucial in this war. Survival wasn't about technology, it was about heart, and humanity's heart was stronger than anything the alien fleet could throw at them. The humans had learned how to fight smarter, using the alien technology they had captured and adapting it for their own purposes. Makeshift bombs, EMP devices, and hacked alien weaponry became their arsenal. They had no other choice but to adapt or perish. Each day, the resistance grew bolder, more coordinated, until it felt like a single, unified force. The world's nations were no longer divided. In the face of extinction, humanity had found its strength not in its weapons, but in its unity. The final assault was about to begin. The resistance had located the alien fleet's weakened central command ship. It was their last chance to end the invasion for good. But the alien forces weren't going down without a fight. As the resistance fighters prepared for what could be their final push, the alien fleet scrambled to regroup. Every ship that could still move was positioned to defend their leaders' flagship. The final confrontation was inevitable. As the humans advanced, they encountered pockets of alien resistance. They had expected this, but they had also learned how to outsmart their enemies. The alien forces, exhausted and demoralized, fought with a desperation that hadn't been present in the earlier stages of the invasion. Yet, even their desperation couldn't match the ferocity of humanity's last stand. In the skies above, the final battle took shape. The remaining human fighter jets, now joined by the last of Earth's advanced military forces, dove toward the alien flagship. It was a coordinated attack, with each strike designed to disrupt the alien fleet's remaining systems. Every human fighter, every soldier, every civilian had a role to play. The battle had transcended national borders. It was no longer about countries, it was about humanity as a whole. As the alien flagship took hit after hit, Commander Zelo felt his grip on control slip further. His ships were damaged beyond repair, his forces scattered. Earth's final push was coming with terrifying speed. The humans had found their rhythm, their strategy, and now they were using it against the invaders with surgical precision. Xylo's commanders, once confident, were now desperately trying to regain control of the situation, but it was clear that they were losing. The humans were relentless. Inside the command ship, Xylo's mind raced. There was no more time for strategy, no more time for finesse. The humans had figured it out. They had learned to use their strengths against him. The idea of retreating was unthinkable, but it was quickly becoming a necessity. He had no choice but to make one last attempt to break Earth's resistance. With a cold, determined look, Xylo gave the order, "Prepare the final weapon. We will not leave without victory." As the alien forces readied their last-ditch effort, a surge of energy built up in their flagship, a weapon designed to cause catastrophic damage. It was a weapon that could obliterate entire cities. The resistance fighters knew that this was their final chance to stop the invasion once and for all. They had no more backup, no more reinforcements. It was now or never. The humans launched their final wave, a desperate attempt to infiltrate the alien ship and disable the weapon before it could be fired. The air was filled with the sound of explosions, the hum of alien weaponry, and the screams of those fighting for their survival. It was the most intense moment of the war. Every step was a gamble, every move a risk, but it was their only option. The final moments of the battle played out. The alien flagship began to falter. The weapon was disabled, and in a split second, the last of the alien ships began to retreat into the depths of space. It was over. Humanity had done the impossible. Against all odds, they had survived. And in doing so, they had shown the universe that the human spirit, the drive to protect one's home, was stronger than any invasion force, no matter how powerful. For Xylo and his fleet, the cost of underestimating Earth had been high. For humanity, the cost was immeasurable, but their victory would be remembered for generations. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. As the last of the alien ships vanished into the void of space, a profound silence settled over Earth. The skies, once aflame with the violence of battle, were now empty, save for a few scattered remnants of the invaders. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world could breathe again. The immediate danger had passed, but the damage was done. Cities lay in ruins, landscapes were scarred, and countless lives had been lost. Yet, amid the destruction, a sense of triumph lingered. Humanity had done the impossible. They had repelled the invaders, a species far more advanced than their own, who had spent a century preparing for this moment. The aliens had underestimated the one thing that had tipped the balance in favor of Earth, the unwavering spirit of its people. Against overwhelming odds, humanity had united, fought back, and emerged victorious. But that victory came at a heavy price. The survivors, though relieved, were left to face the aftermath. The destruction was beyond anything they had imagined. Entire cities had been wiped off the map, reduced to rubble by the alien bombardment. The physical damage was immense, but the emotional toll was even greater. Families had been torn apart, and entire communities had vanished in an instant. The world, once so vibrant and full of promise, was now a shadow of its former self. In the days following the battle, the world's governments, what was left of them, came together to begin the long process of rebuilding. But this was no ordinary rebuilding. The human race had been tested in ways that no one had anticipated, and the scars of war ran deep. Trust was broken, and the fear of what had almost happened lingered in every corner of society. Yet, through it all, there was a newfound sense of unity. The walls that had once divided nations, religions, and races began to crumble. There was no longer any us versus them. Now, there was only we. Across the globe, efforts to repair the damaged cities began. People worked together to clear the rubble, rebuild homes, and restore what had been lost. The damage to infrastructure was staggering, but it wasn't just physical reconstruction that was needed. The true rebuilding had to come from within. The people of Earth needed to heal not just from the loss, but from the deep emotional wounds inflicted by the invasion. Psychologists, counselors, and leaders from every corner of the Earth worked to help the survivors process their grief and fear. Communities that had once been strangers to one another now found common ground in the shared trauma of the war. People who had once been rivals now found themselves united in their effort to rebuild, not just their cities but their spirits. As the days turned into weeks and then into months, the world began to change in ways that seemed impossible just a year ago. Nations, once divided by politics and old grudges, now began to work together. The global summit that took place in the aftermath of the invasion was unlike any seen before. It wasn't about power or influence anymore. It was about survival, collaboration, and rebuilding the world into something better. The Alliance of Nations formed a united front, not just to rebuild Earth, but to prepare for the future. The lesson learned from the invasion was simple. Humanity could not afford to stand divided. The alien threat had shown them how fragile their existence was. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: if Earth was to survive any future threats, they would need to stand together, united in purpose and strength. But even as Earth worked to rebuild, there were those who couldn't shake the lingering fear of another invasion. The aliens had been powerful, and their fleet had been nearly invincible. What if they returned? What if there were more of them out there? These questions gnawed at the survivors, and many of them wondered if they had truly defeated the aliens, or if it was simply a temporary reprieve. For some, the fear was paralyzing. For others, it was a call to action. Military forces across the globe began to mobilize, not to wage war, but to ensure that Earth's defenses were stronger than ever. New technologies, born from the wreckage of the alien fleet, began to emerge. The survivors studied the remains of the alien ships, learning from the technology the invaders had left behind. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked together, combining their knowledge and skills to create a more advanced defense system. It wasn't just about technology, though. The humans had gained something even more valuable from their victory. They had gained the confidence that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed, humanity's spirit could never be broken. They had learned that in unity there was an unmatched strength. The lessons of the past of division, of fighting for survival alone, had been rendered obsolete. Now, humanity faced the future together, with a resolve that was stronger than ever. As the years passed, the scars of the invasion faded, but they never completely disappeared. The survivors, particularly those who had lived through the darkest days of the war, carried the memory of that time with them. They knew that the world had changed forever, but they also knew that they had come out of it stronger. The story of their survival, of their victory, would be passed down through generations. It would be a reminder of the day humanity stood up against the impossible and triumphed. The human race, battered but unbroken, had emerged from the ashes of war. They had faced their darkest hour and had come out victorious. Earth was theirs once more, and they had learned a vital lesson. They had learned that no enemy, no matter how powerful, could defeat them if they stood united. The alien invasion, though devastating, had not broken them. Instead, it had forged them into something even stronger. The war had ended, but the journey had only just begun. The future was uncertain, but one thing was certain: humanity would face whatever came next together.